Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. Let me ask you this. What makes a company culture? And what company cultures are you familiar with and why? You'll realize very soon that a company culture and a brand are not that different. And truth be told, building a company culture has a lot to do with the things that you do intentionally, but a lot of things that you're not doing intentionally that you're building without even realizing it. Company culture is really based on your reputation, not only to those you hire, those that you support in your organization, but also those you serve as customers. There's an overall culture that you're creating that is going to basically attract or repel the types of people that want to either work with you or for you. And I'm really excited to welcome onto the show today somebody who's an expert in company culture, Caoliine Pennington. She is an executive search recruiter with over 15 years of experience working on the agency side. She's also recruited entry-level to C-suite professionals with both privately held and publicly traded companies all throughout the United States. She has a podcast called Feminine Founder, where she interviews female founders, executives, and HR leaders to discuss best practices when it comes to recruiting and hiring. I'm excited to have her on the show today to discuss what company culture means, how we can create a better company culture for ourselves, even as solopreneurs. So even if you don't have a big team, this episode is for you. Listen in on how you can craft your own company culture. Hey, Caoliine, welcome to Keep What You Earn.
Hey, Shannon, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And tell everyone a little bit about yourself as we introduce you.
I'm an executive search recruiter. I've been working on the agency side the past 15 years. I am a podcast host. My podcast is called Feminine Founder. And I also am the founder of a product-based business called Chilled Vino. Because I work in the people business, you got to have some wine too.
Oh, I totally agree. I feel like you can't be an entrepreneur without, a little bit of wine every now and then.
Totally.
I love that. I absolutely love that you're also an entrepreneur and you're working in recruiting. How did you get into, well, first of all, I feel like it's a silly question to ask you how you got into wine, because I'm like, I could probably relate to that. But number one, what got you into recruiting? Number two, did that send you down the wine path? Number three, why did you start a product-based business? So I'll let you just kind of unravel the story.
Sure. So number one, funny story, I got into recruiting in 2010. So imagine, Back it up, market was in complete turmoil. There was no jobs. I walk into this agency, a massive international agency, as a candidate looking for a job. And they said, why don't you come work for us? So I started in 2010. I was placing temporary accounts receivable clerks, call center reps, you name it. And now 15 years later, I've placed executives with Fortune 500 companies. I work with privately held companies, work with private equity companies in the C-suite space. So COO, CEO, CFO. I started the podcast about 6 months ago. It's a recruiting and hiring podcast for women in business. So I typically interview female executive entrepreneurs, HR professionals, business owners that are just figuring out how to hire for their business. And then, yes, the recruiting business. I've always been interested and I've always liked wine. And my husband and I were on a trip in 2016 and we were at a resort. They served us, I got a glass of rosé and I had to drink it fast, chug it hot. So I was like, let me think about a product that would keep my wine cold outside. So I went down the path of working with an engineer, getting a manufacturer, all the things. And so I sell chilled vino direct to consumer online, and then you can find it on Amazon as well.
Is it actually wine or is it like a product that keeps it cold?
So it's a plastic wine glass and it's got a patent. I have a patent. It's got insulated cooling technology in between the walls of it. So you stick it in the freezer for 4 hours before you want to use it. you pull it out, and then it'll keep your wine cold for hours. So the purpose of it is to drink wine by the pool, by the ocean, outdoor on the patio, and your wine will stay cold the entire time, or cocktails, whatever you choose to sip in it.
I love it. Side note, definitely going to be talking to you after this about bringing some of those down to Costa Rica with me next time we go. That will be essential. I love it. But we're going to talk today about the recruiting side of what you do today and really start to unpack company culture and how it relates to really all these different dimensions of success in your business. I think that having a really strong company culture is paramount right now, especially to differentiate you in what seems to be kind of a tumultuous job market. So could you help us just understand how you define a company culture and some of the ways that you've seen people implement it?
Company culture starts at the top. And company culture also is difficult to explain, but easy to explain at the same time, because it's the way your employees feel about their jobs, about working at your organization. When I'm talking to prospective candidates, the top three things that they mentioned that are important to them: pay, obviously, flexibility, and then culture. They always want to work for a company with good culture.
And then, so for culture, what are the elements of a culture? Because for some, they would associate like, oh, we have ping pong in the break room. That's part of our culture. Or, the core values on the wall are part of our culture. Or we do Jeans Fridays as part of our culture, right? There's like superficial cultural elements, but then there's something a little bit deeper to it, I think.
All of those things matter. I will say a lot of companies have the core values. They say they have company culture, whatever is a buzzword, but it's not a buzzword. It's how your employees actually feel. So in my opinion, it starts in the beginning, your recruitment process. How are you recruiting candidates? What is their experience when they interview with your company? Is the process streamlined? Are you drawing things out? Are you interviewing them a million times for no reason? So it starts with the recruiting process. Then I think offering your employees professional development opportunities, even if you're a small company, is super important. Just talking to them and asking them what they need and what they want, providing a safe space for them to give you feedback without being defensive. And regular check-ins are always very important too. I mean, they don't need to be weekly, but not just one annual review. Okay, great, we checked the box, but really keeping your thumb on what matters more day to day than that.
And how do you recommend people, I guess, measure culture, right? Because somebody might be listening to that and say, okay, I feel like I have the process locked down. I know how I evaluate candidates. I know how I interview, but how do I know how well I'm doing, right? Because very seldom will a candidate or an employee tell you, yeah, that was a really shitty interview process. Like they won't tell you that. So what ways can you use to evaluate if you're building the culture that you intend?
Surveys. Sending out surveys, even if you're a small company, send out a Google form, send out, SurveyMonkey, whatever, and ask for feedback. Make sure it's anonymous. Reassure your employees that they can provide feedback honestly. And then once you receive that back, you can know where to pivot.
Absolutely. And I understand too. I mean, like, so for me, right, if we were implementing that, it's like a team of 3. So like, she's probably going to figure out who said this, right? But I think it's also building a culture where people aren't fearful to give that feedback. I think that's actually the deeper culture, is a culture of openness, 360-degree feedback, and knowing that they're not going to be, criticized for giving feedback, or that the person receiving it won't get defensive, right?
1,000,000%. Providing a safe space for employees to openly, like you said, even if it's 3 employees, okay, maybe a survey is overkill, but just having a one-on-one conversation with them of, how can I be a better leader? What do you need from me as your supervisor? What else? Is there anything that we could change your job that would make it more interesting so that you can be more engaged? Just have an open conversation with them.
Yeah, I would say it starts with understanding the goals of each employee, because everyone has unique goals, motivations, drivers. And the more you can understand that, the more you can step up to the plate and make sure they're progressing in those goals. Because you mentioned professional development, which I think is crucial. And I think this is something that's kind of off to the sidelines that people don't remember, is that you not only have to develop yourself as a leader, but you have to develop your employees and your team to make sure they are progressing in the direction they want, because they're not going to be happy doing the job they're doing forever. So let's talk about that for a second, and how you can implement professional development and how you can extract goals from your employees so you know what to provide them.
So extracting the goals, finding out what they want. I would have some kind of accountability or metrics so that you can know if you're checking the boxes there. But, offering, even if you're a small team, a mentor program, your employees want a piece of you. They want to learn from you. That's why they came to work for you. So even offering, you may say, I don't have time or whatever, fill in the blank, but make time, because it'll go a long way with keeping your employees happy and retention.
Yeah. And Gary Vee has said this before, and it really stuck with me. And he said something to the effect of, your employees don't work for you, you work for them. So you are in service of your team. How would you elaborate on that, and if you agree with that statement, and how you would apply that in terms of advice, like just that quote alone saying, like, they're not in service of you, you're in service of them?
I agree with that 1,000,000%. Obviously, the CEO of the company has to drive the company, move it forward, whatnot, but you also have to serve the people that work for you, because they're serving your customers. And happy employees serve happy customers. And it starts at the top. So making sure that your employees are, where they need to be professionally, and giving them time. They want your time. That's why they came to work for you and your company. So making that a priority is definitely crucial.
I agree. And one thing I've noticed lately, and you guys know I'm in the accounting industry, and we're really hurting right now for quality candidates. We're really hurting for people through the pipeline who want to do accounting. I mean, I don't blame them. So a lot of them don't want to work 50-hour weeks and work through busy seasons. I totally get it. But what I'm noticing is there are a lot of folks that are posting on social media these jobs, right? But it will be a list of the requirements to come work here. So I look at it like online dating. I feel like this generation of employees is looking at this like a relationship and going, do I want to work with these people? And what's so interesting is there's like a paradigm shift. Do you agree? Where it's like, instead of showcasing, for example, if I'm posting a job description for an accounting firm, it used to be maybe like 15, 20 years ago, it used to be just like, here's what we need you to do, apply here. And you could rest on that. But I feel like now we have to make a case. Why us? And we have to make a case for, why would you want to come work here? And what can we do for you? I'm actually noticing that language shift. Could you just unpack that for a second? I know you're a LinkedIn junkie like me. You probably see these jobs that are posted. Do you see this shift happening?
1,000,000%. And this could be for another podcast. Posting and praying is not an effective recruiting strategy. I don't care.
It isn't?
The language? No, it's not. It's not at all. I can go more into that a different day, but you're right. Yeah. And then I was at an AICPA meeting recently, and the amount of graduates graduating college with a bachelor's in accounting is decreasing by 25% every single year. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a significant decrease in accounting professionals, especially in public accounting. It's going to be not good.
Yeah. I think that's why signaling your culture is so powerful right now, because if you create a culture that fosters exactly what you said, development, creativity, whatever it is they value, if you can connect on the value system, then they're going to want to come work for you, even if the pay isn't as competitive, or even if, or if you offer more flexibility, things like that, right? You have to tap into what they want. And again, anecdotally, I actually posted a job among this horrible shortage we're feeling. I posted a job on LinkedIn. Within 48 hours, I had 4 interviews scheduled, and I had like 40 applications. And I'm like, huh. And I realized, and then I asked them why they applied. Most of them cited one bullet point. And that bullet point said, we are allergic to timesheets. So that said 2 things, which I like to do. I just like to be funny, and like I like to be inappropriate as much as possible in like a funny way. So to throw something unexpected into a very professional setting that hints at, we don't really take ourselves too seriously here. We're not a typical firm. So I said, we're allergic to timesheets. And what that did was that infused a sense of humor where it was like, okay, this is different. She's actually trying to be a little funny. I don't know if I was, but trying to be a little funny. And then they also don't do hourly billing. This is awesome. Click. Because I knew that's what people want. But I think that, I got an unexpected result from that one little thing that I added in. But I think that the point of that being, I think that company culture that you're signaling is in the subtleties as well, not just in the overall policy. So even if you're in like a Fortune 50, Fortune 500 company, like culture isn't set by the memorandums that go to the whole company. I feel like it's set in the subtleties. Do you agree?
I agree. It starts with, your online presence. Do you have a company page? What does your online presence, Shannon, look like? You got to go into company employer branding. That matters too. These candidates are looking up all of this and researching it before they press that apply button. And you mentioned the funny bullet point. I love that you did that. Gen Z that's coming into the market right now, they're demanding that. And if they're not getting that within their first couple of weeks, they're out.
Totally agree. And you have to know what they're looking for and how you're being evaluated. It's so funny because I guess millennials, we're kind of getting double screwed right now because we were the candidates who had to impress before, and we were in the lower level position of please hire me. And it was the employer's market when we were applying. And that was in 2007, 2008 when I graduated. Then, before everything went to you know what, and then now it is we're the employers. And we still have to be the competitive side because now I feel like it's an employee's market to pick where they want to work. And I think some people are just like, wait a minute. When I was younger, people were chomping at the bits just to work at these companies. Why isn't that true anymore? And I think we have to just be aware of that we do have to set that culture. We have to be able to take responsibility for being an attractive employer.
The mindset of, oh, I have a job available and I'm going to pay this person and they should want to come work for me is over 1,000,000%. That the mentality does not work with attracting quality candidates at all, period, because people will smell that. They will smell that you are trying to get them to come work for you for all the wrong reasons, and it won't work out. And then you wasted all that time and energy recruiting, posting, the money you spent on the ad on LinkedIn. And then, a couple months later, when they leave, because you don't represent the kind of culture they want to work for, you're out.
Right. And we've talked about kind of the pre-hire process and the recruiting. Now let's talk about people who come in the door, they come work with you. What are the ways that you can set a really strong culture with them? And define your culture, honestly. Like, I almost feel like there's different cultures of, do you want to have a high performing culture? Do you want to have a culture of empathy, a culture of, ethics? There's other ways to build it around. It's not just about the experience, although that's a big part of it, of the definition. I feel like there's also a bit of the values infused in that and what your expectations are of people so that everyone kind of knows what mission they're on together.
I think it all starts with transparency. So you've got the core values on your website, but do you live them, breathe them, all the things every single day, and reminding your employees, of the core values of the organization? And then I think too, being transparent about, okay, what are we doing here? Like, what are the goals for the company? Where are we at? What are we doing? And if employees know the goals and see the transparency, they trust more and they are more loyal to their employers. If it's just like, okay, I just come to work and willy-nilly, I don't know what we're doing and the purpose is here, then they're not going to be as committed.
Right. They're going to treat the job as transactional, and that's where you have to compete on pay and other things because you've positioned yourself as a transactional relationship where they can just go get paid, working at Dunkin' Donuts. There's no mission behind it.
Yeah. And if they feel like, if they know the goals, the core values, where the company's at, where the company's going, they'll feel like they're part of something. And it'll be more than just a paycheck to them.
Yeah. And let's just say, infusing those surveys in, let's say you get the surveys back and they're not what you want them to be. They're not what you think the culture is or is being built on. And maybe you're a little bit surprised at the feedback you're getting. Now, let's just say we're receptive to the feedback, but we're like, oh, I didn't know that they felt this way, or I didn't know this was happening. What are some ways that you can sort of bounce back from maybe a negative perception of company culture?
That's a tough question because that's really hard to do. I think it's little baby steps at a time. Maybe you don't agree with it, but taking a break, processing it, really understanding maybe where the feedback is coming from and where you can make pivots to make the changes to get the train going in the right direction.
Yeah. And I know when I was in corporate America, we discussed this too, because you looked me up on LinkedIn, saw my corporate background, and basically where I've worked, and you kind of probably have an idea of the culture there. And I would say that one thing that went a long way for me is if someone was willing to just get up and say, I effed up, or I've made a mistake, or I had a misunderstanding of, and here's my commitment to you to improve. So I'm trying, and I would like you to be honest with me if I'm moving toward that goal or not. Because for me, it was about the self-awareness to go, I know what my tendencies are, and I'm working on that. But if you could tell me when I'm slipping, I would really appreciate it. That would go such a long way for me as an employee.
Definitely. And so much better too, to take responsibility than make an excuse. And even if you did mess up or you did cost a client or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, just fix it and let's get through it together and move forward, right, and provide an environment that fosters that kind of communication.
And then we get into sort of the employee engagement part, right? And I feel like there's this balance we have to strike, because one thing I often find is you involve employees in, say, decisions, or you keep them in the loop. You keep them, again, transparency and communication. You want to be as forthcoming and get them involved in as much as possible. But let's be honest, employees don't always have the best ideas or the ideas that will go to fruition. So how do you keep them engaged when, you can't make everybody happy?
You definitely cannot make everybody happy. I think it's providing a place that they can at least feel heard. Whether or not you take their suggestion or ideas and run with it, it's your company, it's your name on the door at the end of the day. You're the one who's running all the risk with the company, so it's yours. But if they at least feel like you've heard them out, then that goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think that the more maybe low stakes decisions that you can involve them in, the more engaged they'll also feel, if they feel like they are valued and they are heard and they are getting asked to contribute. Because that was a big thing for me, at least for motivation, was, do you care about my opinion? Even if you don't take my idea, do you care enough to ask me what I think about it or ask for input? I think that does go a long way.
It does. And then one thing I'm going to add to this conversation that's not so aligned with this too, I think having fun together, it goes a long way with employee engagement. I mean, forget the pizza party thing, okay? No one likes for pizza party. Just no, thank you. Save the pizza party. But do something fun together, like have an experience. Do something with your employees that you can do as well. Like, do a ropes course or rafting trip or something like that. It doesn't have to be all the time. It doesn't have to be a big fancy party where you blow a bunch of money, but do something where they feel like, they can let the walls down a little bit, have fun with each other.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just remember all those pizza parties, all the, we did a pizza party. What else did we do? They did like a scavenger hunt and like a mini golf day or something. But it was stuff that we never would have done for fun on our own. So it was kind of an interesting, it almost felt like a forced game day or something, like a field day. And I was like, can we just go back to work? So you have to also make a good choice about what type of activity, or let people pick it, right?
Definitely. Or you could even send out another survey. Okay, I'm thinking about these 3 things. What do you guys want to do? And it could be happy hour, a day activity, whatever, but pay them for their time, obviously, for doing that too. Don't expect them to take an unpaid day to come hang out with you. But providing a fun experience, I think, goes a long way.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point too, where I think I just remember my company saying, we're going to do a Zoom happy hour. And it was after hours. And you couldn't even pay me to hop on Zoom an extra hour during 2020 to go hang out with my coworkers again. Because we spent all day with each other. So you have to be really specific about what are we gaining from this? What do people actually want to do? how will it empower them? How will it help? And will they enjoy it? I think you bring up a really good point of just the pure enjoyment, like not over architecting tactics and strategies to build culture, but simply tapping into, how do we actually just have fun with these people?
Yeah, and I think too, like you said, the Zoom happy hours are they're the pizza party category for me. Like, no.
Yeah.
If you want to let me leave work at like 1:00 and go have an early happy hour 2:00 on a Friday, and let's go to like a rooftop bar or something like that, easy smeezy, then that sounds like a better option. But happy hours Zoom is a no.
Yeah. And do you have any experience too? I mean, I know you do. Not do you have experience, but what types of experiences do you have in working with your companies that you serve, or even in your career, where you've seen either great success or great flops in company culture cultivation?
So we'll talk about the failures first. Right now, the companies that are mandating candidates coming back on site to work, that might be working right now, but that's not going to work in a year or two. The war on talent is going to be on like Donkey Kong. And it's not the employee's problem that you have commercial office space leases to pay for every month. Like, they just don't care. And they want the flexibility. Like, every single conversation I have with candidates, I don't care what level, again, 3 things: pay, flexibility, and culture. And they can feel the culture even in the interview process and when they're, going through that with your company. The companies that do it right, they have the highest retention rate. And they're the companies that are listening to their employees, that are treating their employees well. They're paying market rates, they're providing flexibility, they're doing the professional development, they're having fun together. So, and again, you can look on LinkedIn, their employees have tenure, more than 2 years, which is an anomaly these days sometimes. But those are the kind of differences I see in the market now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Any unique examples of ways people have, applied anything we talked about today, whether it be the fun element or in their recruitment or in their professional development, like any unique ways that you've seen it applied that maybe we haven't thought of that we could pull from as an example?
One thing I've seen, that companies that bring speakers in regularly to speak to their employees about a topic that's aligned with what they're doing. Maybe it's someone who's really good at sales and they're speaking to their sales team. I feel like companies or employees and candidates really enjoy that because it's a third party giving them advice. And it's a third party, speaking to them. So it's not their boss or the CEO or whatever, fill in the blank. It's someone who's more neutral, and they feel more energized and alive and motivated after those sessions. And so I think that's been a cool way that I've seen companies promote or help with professional development that's added towards a positive company culture.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And, when looking at your own company culture, let's say someone listening is saying, well, I have a small team, but I do want to set the right tone and I want to build that culture from scratch and from day one, right? Because I want to infuse that into what I do and how I operate. What are some ways that maybe, or even if they have a team right now, right? How can they evaluate their own company culture? Again, there's the surveys with the employees, right? But is there a way that they can, reflect, or what are the questions they can ask themselves in terms of how they're contributing to that culture?
I would do self-reflection with thinking about, okay, are my employees happy? Do I have high turnover? If you've got high turnover, there's a problem there. And so discovering what is the problem there. Is it the work that they're doing? Is it me as a leader? Is it I'm hiring the wrong people? Understanding that. And then if on the flip side, if you have employees that have been with you a long time, that speaks volumes too. Maybe have a better understanding of what keeps them. Are they loyal because they need a paycheck, or they actually like working here? I think one thing too that helps with employee engagement is celebrating the wins together. And so they know, so your employees know that they're, part of the end goal with this too. So, and not just sharing the negatives, we need more sales or we need more revenue or whatnot. We know the company is not a nonprofit and we're here to make money, but celebrating the small wins too.
Yeah. And it's a fundamental belief I have that if you have a strong company culture among your team, employees, within the company, that translates into a strong company culture that faces externally. and that people want to work with as customers as well. Talk about the relationship a little bit between a strong company culture and strong customer service and reputation.
It's all a ripple effect. Everything that you put out there will come back at you. So if you've got a good online presence, you've got good reviews, people know who you are, you have good employer branding, maybe you have a marketing budget, maybe you don't, maybe it's organic, either way, what you put out there, people will feel. And then the happiness of your employees, if the culture is great, they'll be nice and kind to your customers and, continue on from there with repeat business and referrals, whatnot too. So, but again, it starts at the top.
I also love the idea of finding people that you want to emulate or finding leaders of strong company cultures, learning from them and understanding what it is they're implementing or how they're leveraging feedback and using good examples to help guide you as well. Because we were talking about this before we hit record as well. Most business owners who are starting brand new small businesses right now, early stages, don't really have, when I worked at the companies I worked for, we had HR departments, we had standard processes, we had all these things that we just kind of plugged into the assembly line of how the hiring process goes. But it's the wild, wild west out here in entrepreneurship.
It's definitely the wild, wild west. And it's like, okay, I need to hire somebody, but I need them to do marketing and finance and operations and do my shipping. And that person doesn't exist. You have to focus on what do you need right now? And then define and then draft up the job description and start from scratch. And then, well, where do I find a candidate now? I have a job description.
Yeah. And it's like we go back to, and your job description isn't just a laundry list of the stuff you need done. It's got to be focused on the candidate too, what you value, what they should value, especially if you want someone to stick around for the long term.
Definitely. And then job descriptions too. I love that you took a non-traditional route, put that one bullet point in there, and then that you asked them that what attracted them, and they said that, because those things like that go a really long way.
Yeah, I always say, what attracted you to the position? And most people are very honest at this point in saying, like, these 3 bullet points were what kind of got me to click it. And I do the same thing with clients too. Like, what made you click work with us now? Or what made you commit to going to our website today? And that is a big, again, like, so simple and so powerful that we forget to ask these questions directly to say, what is the number one thing? And the same goes with clients, or not with clients, well, clients and employees who leave. What was the tipping point for you? And being willing to hear that answer. Because I think there's just so much to be gained in feedback and powerful, knowledge for you to be able to act on if they can be super specific.
Exit interviews are a must, 1,000,000%. And I think that you're right. It's something that's overlooked. It's just like, okay, well, they left, whatever, I'm over it. But you could gain some knowledge on where to pivot or what went wrong or how you could have fixed things if you had the information.
Yeah. And I would say don't get defensive. I think that's one of the biggest problems, is that we tend to rationalize the feedback as something wrong with them or circumstances that invalidate their feedback, right? So it's like, well, they're disgruntled. Well, they're having a bad day. It's always them.
Always them.
It's always them. And we try to rationalize. I don't know if it's just like, I have to look into, maybe there's like neuroscience to this, of like, we just reject the fact that it's like we might be the problem.
We're in the people business. I don't care if it's service-based, product-based, whatever. If you have a company and you have a team, or even if 2 people, 3 people, whatever, I don't care what the number is, you're in the people business. And so people have emotions, they have feelings, they have bad days, they have good days. And so, being able to be a little flexible there with understanding that too.
Yeah, I agree. It's so important that, like, I love that you just said that. We're in the people business no matter what type of business we have, because that is ultimately why we're here. We need a team. We can't do it alone most of the time. If we want to grow the way we need to, we want to keep what we earn, right? We have to grow the team, grow the revenue, grow the clients. And I feel like it all really starts with that culture. And I so appreciate this conversation, Caoliine. Can you mention one more time the name of your podcast? Because I think it's awesome. And I want everyone to go listen to it. What's the name of it again?
Feminine Founder.
Feminine founder. And you're interviewing, if I have this right, you're interviewing major CEOs, right? Women founders, CEOs, business owners, startup owners. There's probably so much gold and knowledge that you've gained from that. Can you share maybe like a takeaway you've had that might be an interesting tidbit from an interview you've done?
I interviewed 2 founders recently that started a marketing agency in Chicago, and they were ex-corporate America employees, had executive jobs with big, big companies like the ones that you used to work for too. And they went out on their own. It was just a party of 2 for the first year or so. And then they had to go hire and figure it out, write a job description, find the first employee, all the things. They did the posting and praying thing. It didn't work for them either. So they actually got creative and plugged into a mom networking group that it was for moms that maybe had taken some time off and then wanted to go back. So they connected with the founder of that organization. And that group specifically has fueled all of their employees that they have hired, and they actually all end up being female. But I thought that was just such a creative way for someone that didn't have a recruiting background or HR background to plug into a resource that you wouldn't have thought of. Of course, LinkedIn's like a go-to, Career Builder, Monster, ZipRecruiter, whatever. But to go to a group that specifically fosters and is for women who want to go back to work and tap into that and then turn those people into full-time employees, I think was incredible.
Yeah, it's almost like niching down in your clients. You're almost niching down into your team and saying, what types of people do we want to hire? And let me go find where those people are hanging out. It's a brilliant move. So Caoliine, one more time, is female founders, right?
Feminine founder.
Feminine founders. See, this is why I have to have you repeat it. Feminine founders. Go listen to her podcast, Feminine Founders, on, I guess, all podcast platforms.
Yep.
Are you on all the platforms? Awesome. Caoliine, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
If you find yourself surprised by how much you make and how little you actually keep, then your problem probably isn't your profit. It's your cash flow. Cash flow problems are the #1 reason small businesses fail because they run out of gas in the tank. And that's why I released a mini course called Endless Cash that helps you quickly forecast your own cash flow using the same template that we use with our clients. If the pressure of launches and big investments stress you out, then grab a copy of Endless Cash and start getting ahead of those road bumps right now. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.